to start recording. Thank you, Jaira. Once again, I welcome you to the workshop. This is our second workshop for the IOTLS grant. The first one, we held it in June, on the 21st of June. And you have had a feedback about that. This second one, we want to look at the pilot period. And as I said earlier, Ildefonso, for the record, Data and Learning Manager at the Foundation, and supported by my colleagues at the Foundation and at the MOJ, the Ministry of Justice. The structure of this workshop is as follows. After the introduction, we are going to hear from 3 organizations who will be sharing for 10, 15 minutes each, sharing about the experience on the implementation of IOTLS, especially their feedback with regard to the M&E function. If you have any question, this is for housekeeping. If you have any question, do post it in the chat and it will be picked up by my colleague, Jaira. After each speaker, we are going to read the questions and endeavor to answer them from the chat. And after the last question and answers, we will conclude the workshop by telling you the next steps. We are going to talk to you about the reporting schedule, and also we'll give you information about qualitative reporting. And yeah, without further ado, I would like to welcome our first speaker, Zoe of Working Families, to share her feedback on IOTLS implementation. Zoe, you have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ildefonso. Hi, everybody. So yes, what I was going to talk about today was how Working Families is tackling responding to the outcome questions as part of the M&E that we need to do for the IOTLS grant, because this has been an area that we have grappled with a little bit, and we have been sort of trying to find workarounds and ways of doing it that satisfy the reporting requirements, but also aren't too onerous for us or not workable for us and our delivery model. So the kind of basis for this is that we predominantly advise very comprehensively via email. About 80% of the people that we advise receive some kind of emailed advice. And what this means is that our advisors are only on the phone with a minority of the people who are accessing our legal advice. And therefore that is presenting us with the challenge of how do we get our advisors to evaluate the outcomes and how our clients are doing and progressing, and if they've resolved their issues, if our advisors are not engaged in a conversation with most of these people, but it's more an email exchange. So earlier this year, we introduced a new outcome survey. We were already running an early outcome survey, which is sent with initial advice. And we introduced a longer term outcome survey after working collaboratively with Family Rights Group, who were really helpful to us, and also working across team and referencing our theory of change, least access to justice, and sort of designing this survey so that it really tied in with who we are as working families and the people we support. And that was introduced before we had confirmation of our IOTLS grant. And what we didn't want to do was reinvent the wheel, where we had just got this up and running after probably about 6 months of work and designing and collaboration. And we felt it really fit with how we deliver our advice and tracking the outcomes we need to track in line with our theory of change, etc. So we've been looking at ways we can take our survey that we've already established and is proving quite effective, and making that work as our way of reporting against the outcomes for IOTLS. And Access to Justice team have been really helpful, and I've been talking with them and saying, how can we do this? And can we use our survey where our clients self-report on their outcomes as kind of a proxy indicator for the outcomes that we need to report against for IOTLS? So what I'm just going to do is just talk through those sort of key 3 outcome indicator questions and what they are, and then what our survey asks, our longer term impact survey predominantly, and how they can kind of serve as a proxy for outcome reporting. So outcome indicator 1.1 is the client appears to understand their legal problems and any action they need to take to resolve their problems. The short-term survey asks, do you better understand your rights and options as a result of this email? And so we are going to use that question that we are already sending, and that short-term survey has been established for several years and works, and we're going to our clients' self-reported responses to that question as a proxy for that outcome indicator 1.1. Outcome indicator 1.2 is the client appears to be in control of their situation and able to deal with their problems. And we ask our clients, will you act on our advice, as a way of establishing, yes, we know they understand it. Do they have the confidence now, and do they feel empowered to act on it? And we will be using that self-reported question as a proxy indicator for 1.2. And then outcome indicator 2.1 is the client's problem has been resolved. And what we ask in our longer term outcomes survey, which goes out several months after we've advised our clients, we ask, did our advice help you? So it's our employment rights advice and also our welfare benefits advice. We asked, did it help you? And then we have, depending upon their answers, we have some conditional logic with a series of different options and drop downs. We ask, how did our employment rights help you? Our employment advice help you? And then there are some drop downs where they can talk about how, and there are some free text responses. And we will be able to use these questions to answer 2.1. So that's the workaround that we're adopting, which works with our delivery model, because otherwise we will be in a situation where our advisors would have to be proactively ringing all the people they've advised, predominantly via email, to get this follow-up response, phoning them, and doing that kind of advisor assessed outcome. And we just felt that was going to be a whole new piece of work that we're not doing, and we needed to think about the resourcing of that. So that's the way we're approaching that. Also, we wanted to talk about the challenges of trying to, so what we need to do in the survey response, the M&E survey response, is we need to tie these outcomes back to the original query and the stages of advice. So our surveys at the moment are anonymous because we want people to feel free to say whatever they feel about their situation. The way we advise them, was our advice helpful? We generally get really good feedback, but we didn't want people to feel that they can't be really honest with us. This is a bit of a challenge because we now need some kind of identifier to be able to link their outcomes response back to their original query. So we're looking at 2 different options, which we will finalize before the 1st of October. One is we create different versions, 2 or 3 different versions of the survey for each stage of advice, and they're sent in batches to the people we advised at each stage so that we can track responses and tie them back to the stage. But another option we're looking at, which we would like to be able to execute, is that people do give us their email address as an identifier, but we're very clear about how that will be used and be really clear about privacy, etc., because it will enable us to tie their outcomes right back to their original query, their particular issue. We will be able to then, for our own monitoring evaluation, be able to say, okay, well, it looks like, most of the flexible working queries we advise on do get resolved and people manage to solve their problem, but maternity discrimination is more of an issue, for example. So for us to have that complete journey picture would be really helpful. So we are looking at ways we could potentially encourage people completing our outcomes surveys to offer their email address. And one thing we had been looking at anyway, even before the IOPL's monitoring became something we needed to do, to try and incentivize completion, because one of the other things we want to talk about is sample size. It's really difficult sometimes, several months after you've advised somebody, their life has moved on, they're in a busy family, they've got work, they've got children, to encourage them to complete the survey and just take those 5-10 minutes out to complete the survey. So we wanted to incentivize completion more anyway, and something we are looking to do, having worked with a pro bono law firm to help us with terms and conditions, and we have a donor who's willing to pay a small amount towards prizes, is to introduce a prize draw. as entry into a prize draw on completion of the survey. And that, as I said, that was something we were looking at doing anyway, but it's actually, this is proving an impetus to try and increase that sample size. I think something at 10% response or above is considered really good, and we're hovering just below that at the moment. So we want to try and increase the response rate to at least 10%, and we're hoping that introducing some kind of incentive that is relevant and proportional in the current sort of climate will incentivize that completion, and also we hope encourage people to take part who perhaps wouldn't do otherwise if they felt uncomfortable about leaving an email address. So they are all the things that we're looking at around trying to complete the outcomes section of the reporting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zoe, for sharing about the outcomes. Maybe I have a question before giving the floor to other participants. With regard to the form itself, how easy or difficult have you found inputting data in the form?
The form itself, we haven't got any issues with. The form, the way the forms are all structured as sort of web forms is fine. We're not finding that difficult. It's more, how do we make sure that we can find the data, not find the data, but get the data organized enough and all tied together, particularly with the stages, and make sure our sample sizes are big enough before we input it. But the forms themselves, we are finding really clear, quite liking those.
Thank you very much for your answer. We might have other questions for you. I've seen in the chat some people directed the question to you, and I would like to ask my colleague Jaira to read some of the questions that have come in the chat. Jaira.
Yes, thank you, Ildefonso. Actually, I just realized the question that was addressed to Zoe, she answered it, because it was asking what proportion of clients respond to the feedback questions. But do let me know, Zoe, if you have any more to add to that question.
No, I know we're trying to aim from sort of information sharing and knowledge sharing we've done with some other charities. We're aiming to get above that 10% threshold. We're a little bit below that at the moment. I did a Google before I went on leave, and I can't remember what it said now, but you know, what is considered a good response rate to surveys? And I think somewhere a bit below 10% and a bit above was considered good, but I would have to go and revisit that. But I know that we're trying to just bump that up enough. You just can't expect several months down the line, people having busy lives with issues going on, that you're going to get everybody replying and telling you you're wonderful. That's just not going to happen. But it's how we get enough people to re-engage with us and tell us, to give us enough of a picture of what we're achieving.
Thank you, Zoe. We also just have another question directed towards you, asking what program or format your questionnaires are sent out to the clients in. Is it Google Forms or something else?
So they are set up by my colleague who does all our kind of website stuff, and they are on our website, but they are a non-public link, I suppose that's what you'd call it. So they are just done as a web form within our website, and then we're able to export the data that comes back off the back of the website. So I don't do that bit, that's the techie bit. I wrote the survey in collaboration with my colleagues, but then my colleague will get the data through to me from the back of our website. Thank you.
And do you use the percentage feedback from all of your clients, or do you segment the ones funded by IOTLS?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I suppose it depends what you guys will want on that front, but because all the people we're helping are theoretically eligible to be supported by the grant, even if the grant can't cover all those costs, I would be inclined, particularly with the issues around sample size, to use the full sample, because it's still not going to be all the people proportionally who've been supported by the grant. So because all of our work is eligible on our advice service, I would be inclined to just take all of the responses we get and use those as the sample, if that would be acceptable.
Thank you. Just a question to Ildefonso and the rest of the AGGF team, in case they want to come in. That someone would like clarification with regard to signposts and referrals to question 2.1.3 on the monitoring data sheet. Are we counting the amount of clients referred or signposted, or the amount of referrals or signposts per client?
I think we are counting both. The principle for referrals and signposting is we are recording we would like you to record actually the clients who have been referred to the organization, who have been signposted to the organization. And on the other side, we want you to record the number of clients whom you have referred or signposted to other organizations. So we want to have those two sets of figures, those in and those out, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Ildefonso. We also have a couple of questions where they're asking, after the first workshop, I thought it had been decided that the outcome assessment was made by the advisor rather than the client. Did I misunderstand this?
Say again the question, sorry.
Sorry, no, just some of our grantees had understood that after the first workshop that the outcome assessment was to be done by the advisor rather than the client. Was this misunderstood or something?
Yeah, on that one, that's the agreement that the assessment is going to be conducted by the advisor, because it's the easiest way in case you are not able to have a feedback from the client once you have already advised them. But thankfully for Zoe Working Families, they said they're able to send a survey and the client can respond. So we have accommodated that kind of response or feedback as well as an assessment of the client, which is a valid assessment for the client as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ildefonso. Thank you, Zoe. That is it for the questions for this section. In case any other come, we can do the next Q&A session after the second speaker.
Okay, thank you very much, Zoe and Jaira. Our second speaker will be Frank of North Kensington Law Center. He has agreed to share his experience of the implementation of TLS. And Frank, please unmute and have the floor. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Frank, and I am with North Kensington Law Center. What I did was essentially put the form to work. So I simply assumed that the pilot period is a compulsory period of reporting, and I got myself onto the form. Obviously, I've only been able to cover 2 months, July and August, but it was or is representative of what the reporting process is going to be as we move along. My initial feeling about the reporting method and system was quite positive. I did find the form to be quite intuitive. There are quite a lot of notes which direct you into which direction you need to be going. It sort of holds your hand as you go along, and that's pretty really important and useful. If you are a spreadsheet idiot like me, the most information you get, the better it is. And this is exactly what the form does. So from that point of view, it does exactly what it says on the tin. The other thing that I personally liked about it is that it is in a format which I am already familiar with, both from previous grant reporting, from Access to Justice Fund, and also other founders. So I didn't find many difficulties in going through it. However, there are some data which is requested that we do not capture as a matter of course as we do our work. For example, there is a question about whether we monitor our web resources, how many sessions we provide which are just done by web, how many sessions we provide on a particular individuals. We do not at this precise moment keep this kind of data. I guess it's not that difficult to get to it in terms of how many sessions. You would simply need to go onto each case file and just count your attendance notes, provided that you are religious in putting your attendance notes in. but that would also make for a very long, onerous process. And it will also mean having to have a conversation with our case management system operator to make some changes to the metrics that we use to report. How feasible that is for us at this precise moment, I don't know, because I have not had this conversation with our case management operator. But it is something to be seen. But from the point of view of, can we get the data? Yes, we can. Is the data accessible, and the form in which the template requires that data easily accessible, easily understandable? I would say yes, it is. So I'm pretty satisfied with that, and I don't think we will have a massive problem with it. In terms of the data that we are asked to collect monthly, again, that is something I would have expected most of us are already doing. We need to know who it is that we are assisting, and the only way in which we can know that is in literally deconstructing the service users, the client that come in. But it also means that we have to be proactive in the type of information that we get from our clients from the outset. And sometimes that creates a problem because there are some questions that individuals are unwilling to provide or uncomfortable to deal with. But again, that is not a massive problem. I did have an issue, however, with the age bands, for example, because my system has a different points in between each age. And that might skew a little bit the results, because you would have to sort of try and interpret the difference between the age bands on the form and the age band that I do have within my system. Again, another conversation to have with my system operator as to whether they can do that change and whether they can do it individually just for my law center, because we are on a hosted platform and we are all using the same system. Outcomes, just to be clear, the pilot period will be relying on outcomes which will have come from work done. Just a moment. Sorry. The outcomes will have been obtained from a period which predates this particular program. With specialist advice agencies, most of the work that we do is at stage 2 and stage 3. And most of the areas that we do, unfortunately, are really slow moving. So I can predict that our outcomes are going to be over each month quite limited. We deal with organizations, for example, like the Home Office, which is notorious not for its speed. So sometimes over the old immigration unit, for example, you only get 2 outcomes in a month. So that will be a rather slow moving process. But we will be reporting on all the cases if that is okay with the foundation, such cases being prior to this program. In terms of at-court provision of services, we have a principle in most of our units. With our welfare benefits unit, all that we do is court work, nothing more. So we take in everything that comes based on its merits. But with other units, for example, the immigration and asylum units, we have a principle of trying not to take any appeal, any court work, unless we really believe that the work or the case is meritorious. So you might have someone who will pop in with their cases already having been filed, submitted at court, and your advisor then looking at the merits and realizing that actually there are no merits on this case. And you then have a duty to the court not to push a case that you know has no realistic prospect of success. That will be bad advice or negative advice that you are giving to the client. And from experience, it's not well received. So we will have to exercise a lot of caution when someone comes to us strictly at the stage 3 point. As I said at the beginning, most of our work tends to go through the 3 stages. Someone comes in, we assess them at stage 1, we then take on the work at stage 2 until we get a first instance decision. It is not the decision that the person wants, but we believe there are merits, we will take it to a stage 3. Because we believe in the merits and we've been involved with the case throughout, there is not much of an issue. But if it is someone that will come for our assistance already at stage 3 with a case already submitted to the court or the tribunal, and we realize that there are no merits, that will create some difficult conversations. But in general, those were my views on the monitoring and evaluation process. If there are any questions, I'm quite happy to try and address them.
Thank you so much, Frank, for these deep insights. Yes, I think your presentation is clear, and I was able to follow through with regard to the structure of the form itself, and also the outcomes and the activities you are performing and the challenges. But I'm sure there may be other questions. People may have questions, and I would invite Jaira to tell us if there is anything in the chat.
Thanks, Ildefonso. Yes, so we had a couple of questions coming through from grantees who were a bit unsure and needed clarification about the advisor's assessment of outcome, whether that would be advisors or sending it out to clients, and if they can do basically whatever they prefer.
What we do in terms of assessment of outcomes, we compulsorily send a feedback questionnaire to absolutely every client at the end of every cases. We were conscious for a while that most of the time, once a case comes to an end, very often your client doesn't want to see you anymore. I've received what I wanted, life carries on. But we did feel that we needed to encourage people, incentivize people to give us that feedback, because this is what or where we learn what we are doing well and what we are not doing well. So what we have done, for example, we have created easier ways in which that feedback can be sent back to us. And like Zoe mentioned before, we have now a website-based feedback questionnaire. So not only we send the feedback by email with a closing file letter on the post with the same closing file letter, we also encourage clients to go on our website, plug the form from there, and just respond directly there. Do we get a decent response? I would say that yes, we do. Sometimes it is not the response that we would have hoped for or liked. We are all fallible, but I really encourage all criticisms, positive and negative. And if I am honest, the negative criticism are the ones that I value the most, because this is what or where you learn from. When people say that you are great, you've done a brilliant job, that's pretty much the position I feel every day when I look at myself in the mirror. But I need someone to shine a mirror of opposites to me. So I'd like to know, with all honesty, where did we do good and where did we do less good? So feedback questionnaires, I would really, really, really advise anyone to sort of really think about them and make them simple, make them relevant. Sometimes if you can create an incentive for your client to interact with it, do think along those lines and try to put them in practice.
Thank you very much, Frank. On that point, just to add something, we are aware that there are different organizations may be applying different methodologies in getting that outcome on paper. And we would like to encourage the organizations who are doing a client survey or client feedback, not advisor perspective, to get in touch with us in the ATJF France inbox so that we can respond to their suggestions accordingly.
If I can add this, in terms of the advisor's perspective, and I'm just going to speak for North Kensington Law Center, the work that we do is complex, and in some of our units, it creates a repetition of the work. So for example, again, I go back to immigration all the time because I'm an immigration practitioner, but I do not see many of my clients, once I finish their case and they have received the initial tranche of leave to remain, I do not see many of my clients having the ability 2.5 years down the line or 5 years down the line to do their next application by themselves. It's just too complex. So the tendency is that they will come back to us, and I will be reluctant to say that they are now able to better deal with their legal issues by themselves. Again, it is also the same thing with our welfare benefits unit, because we deal mainly with appeals, and benefit is, again, a complex area. And there is also the principle that a lawyer who has himself as a client, as a full-file client, and the same thing goes to your client, the client who conducts their own legal affairs, always or often tends not to be able to see the forest from the trees because they're so immersed within the issue. It's emotional for them. So most of the time, I would say, if there is a repeat issue, they will be coming back to us.
Thank you very much. Jaira, do we have any other questions in the chat?
Yes, thank you, Ildefons. Thank you, Frank. We have a question where someone is asking, could you clarify the question that asks whether all contacts with clients should be recorded or just the initial advice session for each stage? So should all contacts with clients be recorded or just the initial advice session for each stage? With casework, we may have a constant dialogue by text, email, until case is completed. I'm not sure how relevant this data would be. So yeah, I think Ildefons or anyone from the team, but in case you have anything to add, Frank, as well, you feel good.
Yeah, I cannot prescribe a specific methodology how to record the client's feedback, but as long as you are able to summarize the client's feedback without necessarily recording everything concerning that client, that we are fine with that. We are not compelling you to show us every detail of the client's interaction with the organization. That's what I can answer to that question. I don't know if Frank has some, how you do, Frank, when a client has multiple times been interacting with the organization. How do you record the client's overall perspective?
Thank you, Ildefons. I think that that is going to depend on the stage, on the level of work that each organization do. And I don't think we can use a one-size-fits-all on this. With with us, for example, because so much of our work, I would say 95% of our work moves on to stage 2 and 3, we have an obligation to record absolutely everything, because there is also the less welcome implication of potential negligence, the need to be able to document what you have done, because you are conducting a case, and what we do is end-to-end casework. Because we conduct end-to-end casework, we need to be able to know, 2 months ago, when Mr. X came to see me, what was it that I said to him? What did I say that I would be doing for him? And does the file show that I've actually done what I promised to do? So that would depend on every separate organization. But I would always recommend, even if it's a brief note, if you can and you have the systems, do have a brief note. You've sent, sometimes the email you've sent to the person recommending that this is what you should be doing, or this is the organization that can assist you. I would recommend that you are able to keep it in some form of system. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't go performing work that you don't need to be performing. But do always, if you can, keep a record of what it is that you have done.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Not sure the answer is satisfactory to everyone, but just feel free to put in the chat additional questions if you want to know more about that. Any other question, Jaira?
Yes, we have someone asking about the same question, signposting and refers to other organizations. Are we wanting them to record all of them as referrals? Like if they send a client, for example. I'll just read the whole question so you can get the context of what I'm asking. We often refer and or signpost clients to other organizations for additional support while we continue to help them with their legal issue. Are you wanting us to record all of this as referrals, or only clients who have been passed on to another organization and cease to be our client?
Yeah, good question. But as far as I'm concerned, if the client is still with you and you haven't referred them to the organization, then you account for the client as your client. If you have referred the client to the organization and you are still helping the client, that is a little bit tricky. But I would say that the two the two instances have to be recorded. The client is your organization's client, but also there is some work that the other organization has done which we're not able to do, which responds to which is what the referral is about. So I would record that twice. I would record that client twice, if that is clear.
Yes, that is all for the questions for this section. Thank you, Ildefons. Thank you, Frank.
Okay, thank you very much, Frank, for all the.
If I can just quickly say this,
yeah, sure,
about recording referrals, really, really, really important, because it tells you about the gaps in advice within the area where you are. It also tells you about how efficient your work and how joined up your work is with other local advice agencies. We do see a lot of revolving door clients that we refer to some agencies because they are the most adequate for the particular issue that they have. And then a month down the line, the client comes back to us because they did not receive the assistance from that other advice agency. So recording referrals and signposting, I think it's really, really important. It just shows you the need or the gaps in advice within your local area.
Thank you. very much. Just to check if our colleagues from the MOJ would like to make a comment or suggestion. No? Yeah. If
Hi,
not,
Ildefonso. Can you hear me
sorry.
okay?
Hi, Paige.
Hi,
Yes, I can hear
everyone.
you.
Hi, my name is Paige. I'm a researcher at the Ministry of Justice. I think you might have met my colleague Maliha at the last workshop, who was covering my maternity leave. Really looking forward to getting to work with you all. It sounds like you're all doing lots of interesting work. Oh, sorry, I just had a pop up. I guess just to answer some of the questions in the chat. So it's really difficult collating lots of data and evidence across so many organizations, especially when you're all working in such different ways, using different data collection systems, different working practices. Trying to get something that works for everyone is really, really difficult. But we're trying as much as possible to have the same approach across all the different grantees. So as much as possible, if you are able to use advisor perceptions, that just makes it a lot easier for us to collate and combine and analyze all the data as one, knowing that people have used the same approach as much as possible. There will be exceptions to this, just as Zoe was talking about with working families, where advisor perceptions just really won't work for how you deliver your services. So for example, with Zoe's service giving email advice. So there will be exceptions here and there. And as Ildefonso said, please do contact the foundation if your service sounds like that and advisor perception really isn't going to work. But if it is possible, that just really helps us with final reporting, being able to look across the grant as a whole and look at how services were delivered and the outcomes that are achieved for clients. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. Really great to hear from you all. I'll be in the chat for the next 20 minutes until my baby wakes up from her nap. But yeah, looking forward to meeting you all properly and getting to talk with you further. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Paige, for this clarification. I think we are doing well time-wise. Yeah, if we don't have any other question for Frank or on this topic, I'm happy to go with the third speaker. And I would like to invite Jason of Greater Manchester Law Centre, who want to share the view of Greater Manchester Law Centre on how the IOTLS implementation has been going. Jason, please unmute and welcome to the chat. Thank you. We can't hear you.
Hear me?
Yes, we can now.
You can't hear me. You can.
We can.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
First of all, you can. Yes. Okay. Hi everyone. I've got a graveyard shift, but I think hopefully the gnarly questions about the rain now. So here we go. This is very much from our perspective, just in terms of background. Our IOTLS funding will support our triage function. We get somewhere in the region of approximately about 12,000 inquiries a year. It equates to about 50 to 60 calls a day and emails. And the idea behind it is to enable us to better support and track those clients and work with agencies in terms of onward referral. And about 50% of those clients would then go on to some form of supported advice, either at stage 2. And we are a specialist agency in housing, welfare rights and employment. So there may well be some level 3 and some support for court proceedings as well, including full representation. So what we've tried to do really is follow the client more than anything else. So basically, if we've got a client that starts at stage 1, goes to stage 2 and goes to stage 3, what we would then do is that we would report each of those at the various levels. We could have 25 different contacts at level 2 or 25 different contacts at level 3. But if it's the same issue at the same level, then that would be reported once. That's the rationale that we've adopted. If I can just step back one stage in there, just in terms of the process, it looks relatively straightforward. You know, the data and the data itself totalizes. It's relatively straightforward and the logic is clear. I think the issue with any form of data capture is actually the input. And one of the elements that we recognise is it can be quite difficult, particularly if you're dealing with people that are calling up for instant assistance. If we recognise quite early that we're going to have to either refer or signpost, then the level of data that we can capture has to be proportionate to the assistance that we ourselves are providing. So what we are aware is at level one, the scope of the data that we actually capture may well not cover all of the areas that are within the data sets within the form. But as we go across the data to level 2 and level 3, the nature of our relationship means that we're more likely to ask lots of questions. So, for example, if we provide some support concerning a potential claim at a county court, we are likely to try and concentrate on the salient facts concerning that, and then make an onward signpost to referral. If it's in an area of specialism, we're likely to capture a lot more information because we'll be taking the case out. And I think we recognise that. And I know from previous programmes with Access to Justice, you're aware that the data match itself is never going to be perfect, particularly at level 1 in relation to it, but we'll capture what information we can at whatever stage that we can, really. In terms of the sort of breakdown of the data, that's gone okay. One of the only areas for us is that when a client, as they progress from level 1 to level 2 or to level 3, there might be a bit of matching. So if in 1 quarter or 1 month, we do initial advice in terms of offer benefits, and then the appeals papers come in and we determine that we are going to represent someone at appeal, or at least undertake the first level of that particular work, there might be a bit of a cross match in terms of ensuring and a bit of admin involved in terms of ensuring that, because the data that we would capture would be a client that we've advised in a particular month, and we're now looking about the way that we can report that in a bit more detail. At the moment, there's a match. So basically, we'll be looking at the clients that we advised in the previous month and seeing if there's been an elevation in terms of the level that we've undertaken. In terms of our approach, one of the other bits culturally, we are a specialist agency, is we tried to do some work with our triage volunteers in particular. And what we're trying to do there is ensure that we try and capture some of the clustering so that we better capture some of the information itself, just the way that clients present. And what that is undoubtedly going to involve is us signposting some of those issues away whilst retaining some of the areas that we ourselves actually specialise in. And yet again, thanks for the guidance on that. That was one of the questions that I had. And what you're saying is we report the signpost as well as the escalation that potentially divide the issues. So there we go. One of the other bits is, I think this is around client perception versus advisor perception. There's a question in tab 3, I think it's 2.1.5, or and that concerns prior advice, where we'd ask people, if a client approaches us because they don't feel that they've received adequate support from another agency, they may well actually say that they haven't received advice previously. And we would argue they have. It might not have been the advice that they wanted, but I think that there's something there. So what we've agreed is that the advisor themselves would make the outcome determinant and the determinant in relation to the reporting, but obviously would take into consideration the client's input, including asking really open questions at the end that maybe aren't as structured as a formal survey, but actually trying to capture in time client feedback in terms of how they understand the advice. Are they happy with where they're happy going next? Is there anything else that we can help with? Just those open questions, and we'll try and elaborate those and match those against some of the outcome reporting itself. And I would say that we all have to recognise that, particularly one of the issues that Frank made, and that's the idea that we undertake specialist advice. Sometimes bad news is good advice. And I think we have to recognise that actually saying to a client that they haven't got a case is part of the duty of care that we owe to clients to come through the door. And if we purely rely upon the client's the client's view of whether or not that itself is a good service, it doesn't necessarily actually inform what we're trying to do. We undertake client feedback. Every client at level 2 and level 3, we will normally have a conversation with at the end of their interviews to try and sort of get them to direct input. But I think we also have to recognise that there can be a mismatch between the perception from the advisor and the client's experience, in particular if we can't assist at the level that the client themselves want. And I think that's something that we have to embrace. One of the issues regarding this is that we've got limited resources in terms of advice. One of our elements is always employment advice, which is going to be supported through our IOTLS grant. Our ability to undertake casework at tribunal is extremely limited, because what we've determined is because of the lack of access to justice around employment advice from the Greater Manchester, that we are going to provide a predominantly level 2 service with a higher volume on that than potentially just trying to concentrate on tribunal work. But what we do recognise then, and we've had this run whenever we've run client feedback regarding our employment service, people want representation and we're not providing that. So they score us down accordingly. But it doesn't take away from the work that we're trying to do. What it does show is that actually the mismatch between resource and access to justice and what clients want, that's where the real issue is. It's not necessarily concerning the service that we're able to provide up to a particular point. The only other thing that I'd say, just going back to the court provision questions, which I think are in section B on the form, there's a question there in terms of the client's ability to understand where they are. I think that's with some recognition that we deal with some clients with quite severe mental health and other disabilities. And actually, in those instances, the work that we will do at level 3 is going to be far more intensive. And actually, the client's perception of that work itself is limited by their capacity. But I think it should be picked up upon within the equal opportunities data, the EDI data on that level. But that might be something to consider. And maybe, yet again, I think within the other part of the report informed, there is some ability to actually put texts in terms of qualitative feedback, and maybe that's something that we could use there. And then the final bit I would say is just, and I'll just reiterate, our learning from previous litigants and person support programs funded through NAJ and access to justice is data capture should always be proportionate. That we're dealing with real people, not lab rats. So actually, the thing that's always going to come first is the advice, and the data capture that matches against that is always would be our prioritisation. And the other element I would say is I'm just reiterating the point that clients' demand is always going to outmatch the service, and I think we just have to take that in the chin to a degree, and in terms of our ability, even with this funding, to be able to meet client demand may well be limited, particularly, and we find this, there are particular areas of law within Greater Manchester where there is no provision, or the ability to access provision is extremely limited. And I would say for our clients from the Ministry of Justice, for example, a large area where we're really struggling is community care, for example, even where someone's legal aid eligible. And I know this from good experience where we've spent 2 months trying to get a community care practitioner to take on a case with merit without success. So I think that there is the bit as well, that this idea that we can provide solutions when there aren't any, that isn't always the case as well. But we just have to be honest and frank within the reporting and the outcome measurement. That's my lot, really. And hopefully there's at least a couple of kernels of wisdom within that. But I'll leave that for others to concern.
Thank you so much, Jason, for giving us this invaluable and slightly different perspective from the other speakers. We can see those different perspectives in the work we are doing, depending on the organization and the type of clients you are serving in different contexts. Yeah, thank you so much. I may probably have one question before going to the questions in the chat. with regard to the level 3, those who need representation, court representation, how easy do you find it to record the information on the client, whether they have had prior legal support or any other type of support before coming to you? How easy do you find the client providing that information to you so that you can record it and add it to the client's file?
I think it's a really simple question. Where have you been before? We normally ask an open question, because one of the bits it says within there is legal or non-legal. So to a degree we can record that. I think this is the point, though, however, that if we were then to go back and survey with clients, they may well say that they hadn't received legal support or support previously because their perception of the support that's been provided was inadequate. So that was the mismatch I'm making. It's easy to do because we asked the question, but I'm just saying that there's potentially a mismatch between the advisor perception and the client perception in relation to what that looks like. And that's the reason why we will be definitely looking at this, where it will be the advisor to complete the form, but obviously take into consideration any input from the client, but recognizing that there could be a divergence at some point.
Thank you very much. I will let Jaira, my colleague, to read the other questions.
Thanks, Ildefons. Thanks, Jason. So we have a couple from the previous, just that have been going on in the chat as Jason spoke. So we have regarding outcome indicators 1.1, 1.2, should we score clients at every interaction or only at start and finish of case?
From our perspective, what we're looking to do is we recognize that it's at the level at which we're advising the client. And if that changes, then we would report the change. So one client could be reported, the same client could be reported at option 1, at level 1, level 2, and level 3. And the time that we would report is when they've moved from level 1 to level 2, or from level 2 to level 3. That's our understanding, and that's what we were looking to do. Obviously, if that's not right, we're happy to look at it. Otherwise, what we end up doing is that we will report in 1 month that we've seen someone at level 1, but there's then no ability for us to then confirm the fact that we're working with them. It could be 3 or 4 months down the line at a higher level. So the easiest way for us to do that, I believe, is we report a different client, but at a different level in that area of law. And but the predeterminant of whether or not we record again is the level of advice that we're providing. If that changes, not if it's just ongoing. If it's ongoing at level 1 and ongoing at level 2, once we've made the report, it will continue. And as Frank said, particularly at level 3, a client's case could go on for months and months. But we're not going to report every month that even if we're having interaction with that client. It's about the change in the level of advice within the framework that we've got, which would then determine when we report the client at that level. Does that make sense? That's our understanding, and that's the approach that we're looking to take, particularly within the pilot study.
Thank you, Jason. Ildefons, is there anything else you'd like to add, or should I go to the next question? Okay.
Sorry, you can go to the next question. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. We are delivering stage 3 as family court independent domestic violence advisors. Do we have to collect outcome data for stages 1, 2, and 3, or just the data for stage 3?
Yeah, again, for us, it's about the level. So if you're not doing it at level 1 and you're doing level 3, we'd report at level 3. It's only if the client, if there's a development in the case, if you like. So we would report that. If someone approaches us and we do work after we've seen them on the duty scheme, for example, and we're doing ongoing casework and they're not legal aid eligible, and all of that, both of those bits would mean that we wouldn't report into this program. But if we were doing ongoing work in relation to court proceedings, and it wasn't being funded elsewhere, then we would report that at stage 3. We wouldn't do it at stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. It's the appropriate level at which we're working with the client at that particular month.
Yes.
Yeah, if I may, yes, I seem to agree with Jason about that process. because if the client going through stage 1, N2, N3 is the continuum, you can assess the client at the point when you want to release the client. You don't need to assess them at stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 separately. When you are going to spend time with them, you can wait until you are able to assess the client wholly throughout the whole period.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a question for Jason. Please, can I double check? So if you count a client in 1 month, but are still working with them the next month, do you count them again if, number one, help provided is at the same level of help, and if help provided is at a different level of help?
So if it's the same level, we wouldn't be claiming them again. It's only if you elevate it, if you escalate it, because that shows the development. That idea that, yeah. So if we would support someone at level 2, and then we determined we were going to represent them at court, and they came in at level 2 in 1 month in August, and then we determined that they had a hearing in October and we were going to represent at level 3, then we would report level 2 for the client in August in that particular matter, whether it be housing, for example. And then in October, when the hearing was, we'd report a level 3 for housing.
Thank you. So we have another question. I think this is just to the team in general at ETJF, Ildefons. Can I clarify? So it's basically that similar to what Jason just answered, but just to clarify that we recount clients that have ongoing advice each month.
Oh, yes. If a client came in July and in August you still have the same client, you have to count them afresh, because the emphasis here is being put on the head count for each month. So if you don't count the client again, it will underestimate the work you are doing with the clients when you are really serving another set of clients. So the counting period is the month. So a client who goes through month 1, month 2, and month 3 will be counted 3 times.
Thank you, Ildefons. Also, just to the ETJF team in general, is the aim of the monitoring to assess the client at the point of engagement or how they feel when our work is completed? The response will be very different.
I think I can give the floor to my colleagues at ETJF. Whoever wants to answer the question. Shabana?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, Jara?
Yes, sure. So is the aim of the monitoring to assess the client at the point of engagement or how they feel when work is completed?
I think that's not necessarily one that Ildefons, I know when you're putting it together and in your conversations with the MOJ. This is in relation to the question, is the aim of the monitoring? Yes, I see. Yeah, sorry, Ildefons, I'm going to defer to you or to MOJ colleagues on that one.
Yeah.
I would assume it's at the end of the support that you would want to assess the outcome of the activity delivered and the client or the advisor's perception of that. Particularly, as I know Jason and other speakers have been saying, you may be working with clients over a long period of time, so over a period of months. MOJ colleagues may say differently. That's my understanding.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll come in if helpful. Hi everyone, I'm Natalie Davis from Ministry of Justice. I head up the legal support team in the Access to Justice Directorate. So yeah, as Shabana said, we're particularly interested in this grant with understanding what the outcomes are. So, you know, in particular, kind of how many people resolve their legal issue kind of earlier than they otherwise would without access to some kind of legal support or advice. So yeah, like, even though we sort of want to know how how many people are seen each month. We're particularly keen on kind of the ultimate outcomes of that engagement. I hope that helps.
Yes, that's helpful. Thank you, Natalie. Hopefully that makes it clear for everyone, but if you still have any other questions, please do feel free to send them in the chat and we'll try to clarify anything not understood. And so we have another question, just to clarify, if I support someone for child arrangements in September, and then it is adjourned to October, and then January, that is counted as headcount of 3. So I think this is still a question about the counting of clients. So I don't know, Ildefonso, if you just want to clarify in general, just one more time in final, just how the counting is done for clients that they see.
Yes, as we end up repeating myself. Said if a client has showed up in July and you are still serving the same client in August, then you will count the client afresh in August as well as a new client in terms of the number of clients. If you still have the same client in September within that reporting quarter, that you will have to count the client again. So every month, if the same client has been present, you will have to count them.
So it was me that was wrong, Ildefonso. There you go. Everyone can blame me on that one. It was me. I wasn't going to do it that way. So there we go. So at least I've learned something.
No problem. I know the organizations, different organizations have different counting system. Some of the organizations focus on the ID of the client and they don't want to seem to double count the client. But when you look at the different side, flip side, which is the activities you are assessing, the amount of activity, the amount of effort you have spent on one client in July, if you are spending the amount of effort on the same client, it has to be accounted for. So that's why we make a difference between the clients and the cases, and also we want each month to account for the actual amount of effort you have spent on the clients, whether they have crossed over from the previous month or not.
Thank you, Ildefonso. And just last question is, I think there is a distinction between how often you count activity, that is every month, and how often you count outcomes at the end of the case. Is that right?
That's correct. The outcomes are measured at the end of the reporting period, whilst the outputs are counted every month.
Thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Jason and Ildefonso. That is it for the questions at this point. So I'll keep an eye out for any other questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any other burning question before we go to the conclusion? Feel free to unmute, ask your question. I think time-wise, we are doing well.
Hi, Ildefonso. It's Eliza here. Can I just add a little bit of just basically repeating what you were saying just now regarding double counting? So I hope you've all received an FAQ readout of the last workshop we had in June. And this question came up as well regarding if you were supporting the same client across several months, should you count these clients again each month? And we responded to that saying, yes, we would like to understand the amount of work or level of support your organization is providing. So to avoid underrepresenting the support provided, this will be based on all clients supported each month, rather than only new clients. We recognize that this means we will not be able to assess the number of additional clients taken on each month, and will take this limitation into account on our reporting and analysis. So hopefully that's a little bit clearer, but I would also urge you to have a look at the FAQs again, just in case some of the questions have already been answered there. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Eliza, for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Yes, so just a question just popped into the chat. Once we have collated the figures for the 6-month reporting period, when do they need to be submitted by?
Yes, the form will be designed actually to accommodate the recording and the saving when you have recorded and you come back to your data. You can even update it. So you save on a regular basis because the monitoring is supposed to be a regular activity, month by month. And when you have saved your data continuously, it will be there, it will be present in the form, and you submit your report at the end of the reporting period. The data will be there saved. Remember to always save, of course. And yeah, the form provides a mechanism to address that, unless I have misunderstood the question.
No, Alphonse, that's fine. But also just to highlight that they will be informed about the dates, reporting dates in your conclusion, but also that would be in your grant agreement that has the reporting dates in there, so you can access that there as well. Another question just before you conclude, Ildefonso, do we report the outcome? So she said that how do we, I think she's asking, how do we report the outcomes at the end of the case or at the end of the reporting? Just as you said earlier, how do they do that?
So it's just to come in, it's clarification order forms. Are they reporting the outcomes at the end of the case or at the end of the reporting period? So if you can just clarify.
Yes, the outcomes are being reported on at the end of this pilot period, for example, and subsequently the outcomes will be reported on at the end of every 6-month period when they are about to send their report. But they will record whatever information is related to the outcomes on a regular basis, but they are not meant to report every month on the outcomes. Maybe I can seek clarification from our MOJ colleagues. Eliza?
Hi, Ildefonso. If it's all right, I'm just going to take this question and probably send it out onto an email, another FAQ, because yeah, it'd be nice for me to get some clarification myself and get back to you. Thank you.
Yeah. As our colleague at the MOJ said, we will inform everyone very soon how this is going to be handled. And basically, this applies to the end of this reporting period, this pilot period. And yeah, we inform you accordingly. Any other question, Jaira?
No, that is all the questions.
Okay, we have exhausted the questions. If you have answered that question, yeah, we are coming to the end of our workshop, and just to tell you about the next steps. The next steps will be, first of all, we are talking about the reporting deadline for this pilot period, which you have been advised to be at the 31st of October, 2023. So the pilot period ends with the month of September, and the reporting period, the reporting deadline will be a month after the end of the pilot period. The other thing which I want to talk about is the nature of your report within this pilot period. We are intending to actually to test out for you to test out the form, because that was one of the purposes, by inputting real data, the data which we have collected about your clients and the activities you are running, so that we can see where the organizations are at and in terms of service. So we encourage you to use the form, to test out the form and input data which you normally collect in your case management systems, your CMS. I want to talk about the next reporting period from 1st of October, because the pilot period ends with September. From 1st of October for the next 6 months, you will be reporting, and you have received actually the full schedule for the reporting. If there is any change, we will communicate that to you. But as it stands, you will be reporting on a 6-monthly basis from 1st of October, with the next 6-month report expected on the 15th of May 2024, then another one on the 15th of November 2024, and the last one will be on the 15th of May 2025. So you have the table. It has been communicated to you. So when we started, I promised that we are going to talk about qualitative reports. Of course, we'll be sending you a template. We plan to send that qualitative reporting template after the pilot period. And you will be required to report on trends. You'll be required to report on insights, successes, and challenges over the next 6 months, 6-month period. So the qualitative reporting will come at the end of the reporting period. So it will not come every month, but the data report will be compiled, of course, on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, but submitted after 6 months, of course. Yes, another point I would like to talk about is the deadline. We encounter issues when the deadline hasn't been respected, when the report has been delayed, and this leads to some kind of protracted reporting, and it makes it difficult for us to summarize the report and to do the necessary learning on time. It affects the other schedules we have. So I would like to encourage you to stick to the deadline, and if you are not able to report to respect the deadline, please get in touch with us so that we can try to solve the issues together. Communicate with us, say, I have this issue, I have that issue, and I won't be able to submit the report on time. Some of you have done it, and yeah, I just want to encourage you to keep doing it, because it helps all of us to be on time and to do the things without creating unnecessary challenges. Lastly, just to talk about the form itself. The form which you have, the online form, has control boxes or comment boxes. Whenever these are meant to help you assess the integrity of the data you have entered. For example, if you enter more in the box of the individual clients, let's say you enter 100 individual clients, and the cases you have reported are 95. It means the clients who don't have a case, and that is an inconsistency, and the system is going to flag that. So please read the comments in the control box. Make sure they have been resolved before submitting your report. Because if they haven't been resolved, they will appear. If they have been resolved, the box will be empty. As far as I'm concerned, I think that's how it works. Yeah, I think those are the points which I wanted to stress. Reporting period, reporting deadline for this pilot, which is the 31st of October 2023. And subsequently, we'll be reporting on a 6-month period. And yeah, stick to the deadline and read the comments in the form on each page before submitting your report. I'm not sure if my colleagues at ATJF or MOJ have something to add, to share, or someone in the Zoom, if you have any question or a comment to make. I thought maybe I would put on the spot Evie from Bristol Law Center, because she has shared with me something good about how to account for the stages, and it would be maybe a good opportunity to hear how she has managed to tweak her CMS to be able to accommodate the counting of the stages of the client's journey. Evie,
thanks, Ildefonso. I think what might actually be useful is if we meet separately with people, just because it can get a bit geeky or a bit technical sometimes, and can be confusing depending on people's understanding of different CMSs. But yeah, I've recently sort of had to tamper a bit with the sort of back end of our system, just to make sure that we've got the right customizations in place so that we can report for this grant, and just so that the caseworkers involved are only seeing the information that they need to input, and there's no other sort of confusing crossovers with other grants that we have. So yeah, maybe if people could put their emails, like some people have already had, and if you're happy, Ildefonso and the rest of the ATJF team, then we can pick it up separately maybe and have sort of an informal chat. Just, yeah, I mean, there's probably more people here that have done more than I've done, so we can sort of share solutions that we've all come up with, if that sounds good. And then, yeah, I'd be happy to sort of go through in more detail the things that we've done as well.
Thank you very much, Evie. Just for the attendance, the participants in this Zoom, feel free to get in touch with Evie North at Bristol Law Center. And if you have any issues with creating custom fields to accommodate the stages, so that you can filter your clients and your activities by stages. So yeah, feel free to get in touch with Bristol Law Center. And yeah, that's all I can say. Anybody else who would like to make a comment? Or ATJF, MOJ?
Just, I know we're nearing the end of the meeting, Ildefonso, so just wanted to say a big thank you to the speakers. It's been really, really insightful and interesting, and we've definitely taken notes. Sorry, I'm the grants director at the Access to Justice Foundation, Shabana, for those that don't know me. We've really been hearing from organisations about the value of opportunities for peer learning and for being able to kind of share what works, what doesn't, how you're approaching different aspects. And so it's certainly something we can consider doing again in the future. And we will be in touch with the cohort as we look forward to doing that. So yeah, thank you, and thank you, Ildefonso, for sharing this so well, and Jaira as well for the questions.
Thank you very much, Shabana, and thank you for our speakers, Zoe, Frank, and Jason, for really great input into our knowledge. And yeah, thank you for having agreed as well to speak at this workshop. Much appreciated. And thank you for all the participants who have asked questions, and those who have also been party to this workshop. I just want to extend my gratitude to all of you. And yeah, with that, we're coming to the end of our workshop, and we stop recording now. And if you have any questions,